People often ask me, Yuri, how do you make liveries for your cars in Roblox? There are many ways to do it. I mean, all of them are going to just be using different little bits of software, but in reality, it's all the same method. And it's the same method when it comes to texturing anything in Roblox. But today I'm going to try and come up with a simplified, definitive guide on how to make liveries. So in front of me, there is a cart. It is something I use in a particular league. As much as it is a very old school looking cart, I think this will be very good to kind of teach on because it's kind of simple shapes. Before we start, understand that each part on Roblox has a bounding box, and it is a box no matter what the shape is. So if it's a cylinder, it still has a bounding box of a square or a cube or whatever you want to say. Same with if it's just a rectangular part, or it's a wedge like this, or even something like this. This one is a little bit weird because it's a mesh, but we don't really need to worry about that. But basically that's just saying that, let's say I put a decal on this part. So if I go here, just put this in quickly. I'll talk more about Asset Manager and images later. If I close that. If you select the decal, you can see that it's on the top face. But if I put it on the left face, then it goes here. I also want you to consider the fact that the selection style on Studio has changed. So it defaults to something that looks a bit more like this, that now outlines the shape of your parts. Personally, I use the one with bounding boxes because it's what I'm used to, and it's what Studio used to default to before this new selection style was added. And this shows you effectively the bounds of what the greatest width, height and depth are for your item, because that is what the textures use pretty much. And it's something that I'll show you in a minute. I think probably the simplest thing, actually colouring the cart. You could just go into your Explorer, as you can see on the right, on your workspace, select your cart, and then go through the grouping, and then select all of the parts like this to then change the colours. So, like for example, this front part here that we've selected, you could just change the brick colour to, I don't know, red, and do that for all of the parts on the car. I tend to find that this is slow and ineffective, especially if your car has a lot of parts and they're not labelled like the person that created this has done with this. So I recommend using F3X as a plugin. To install plugins, I think all you have to do is just go into plugin management in plugins, and then just add plugins with the plus icon there. But basically F3X will look something like this. Some admins use this as a B-tools actually, so it's very similar to that. You're going to want to change your selection mode on the top left, where there's a little kind of crosshair, to parts only, because otherwise it will select the group. And now you can kind of select parts within a group without having to go through the parts tree. So again, if we're making this red, we can just very simply click parts like this, and very quickly we're going to make the entire car red, for example, like so. Congratulations, I've made a Ferrari livery. But Yuri, sponsors and numbers should be on my cart as well, right? After all, it is a livery that we are creating, not just paint by colour or whatever this is. Yeah, well, we can do that. In the View tab, there is Asset Manager, and you can upload images using the bulk import icon. I've got one ready. So let's say we put the sponsor on the side like so. Looks good to me. And maybe we want one on the front. And now you'll notice a problem. Well, the image that we've uploaded is one size. Where it looks good and properly scaled on this side, when we put it on a part that is thinner, then it's squished it. But if we want to put this here, then what do? Well, then we can have a little look at photo editing and, how we're going to scale it properly on this part. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a note quickly of what the scale of this part is. I know that this is 2 by 1 pretty much, because the part is of 0.4 thickness. So it's 2 long and 1 tall, if that makes sense. We can use that scaling in photo editing software to make it work for what we're going to try and use it for. Now, I'm not going to show you a guide on how to use paint.net for a variety of reasons. Firstly, because, well, there are several guides online if you are going to be using this software. What I will do is I'll link a guide on how to use it, and I'll link where to download it. It's completely free. But other people will use different softwares. Some people will use Photoshop if that's what they're used to, and they have a license to use it. Fair play. Some people will even use something like PowerPoint because they don't feel comfortable with something like this, or it's just what they're used to. And that's fine as well. There's no wrong way to use it, really. I would probably stay away from something like Microsoft Paint or Paint 3D because they don't really have fully fledged ways to do layering and transparency and things. I find that helps. So what we're looking at here is just a simple PNG, which is just a way or a file type that has pictures, and the background on this one is checkered, just to show that it's transparent, and then obviously the letters are here in black. The scale of it is on the bottom here. I'm circling it with my cursor, and that's just telling us how big in terms of pixels the object is, and it's telling me it's 2188 by 342, and that's width by height. Now, if you remember our object in Studio, we can say that the height was 1 and the width was 2. So what I'm going to do to simplify this is I'm going to change the height of it to 100 to represent the 1 that the height of the part was, and now we see that the width is 640. So what I'm going to do with that is we can see that effectively perfect scaling in Studio would be 6.4 by 1. I'm now going to change the width to 200 to represent the 2 width of the part, and that's going to make the height 31. And now we can see that the kind of scaling is getting less, but this is purely so you can kind of see. What I need to do now actually is change it from the background layer to just a normal layer. Otherwise we'll get white borders appearing. As I'm going to now go to the canvas size, I'm going to anchor it in the middle. I'm going to change the height to 100, again representing 2, 2 and a 1. And that should now have the part shape of the front of this car. As you can see, this looks like this kind of rectangle. This should be the same. If I now save this to, well, anything really, I'm just going to call it Repsol 2. We go back into Studio. I'm going to just remove this. We're going to go into the upload center. Just going to import the image, drag it from there, and suddenly you can see how that on this shape we've created something on the face, a texture, to just say Repsol, and suddenly it's not stretched. So this is the methoding you're going to be using on pretty much every single part of the car or whatever you're designing. With that all being said, you can use what I've shown you to create your liveries now, pretty much. The only thing that I haven't shown you is a technique known as using decal blocks, and I'm going to quickly demonstrate that. We're going to create a very thin part. I use 0.06 because I often use my increment as 0.05, and that's the smallest I'll use. All you need to do with these is you put your part like so on the side of it. You get it as close as possible to the surface but still have it poking out the top. You make your part transparent and then you get your decal and place it on like so. Now this is better for flat parts than it is for curved parts. If it's curved parts you're going to be using, then 100% I'd use the way that I've just shown you with images and shaping your parts for that. Decal blocks are good because it gives you the kind of freedom without going into your photo editing software to kind of move around your decals. So like you can see with this one, I'm able to move it back and forth and I can like scale it as I wanted to. So like if I wanted to stretch it, I could. If I wanted to squish it, then I could do. But that's one other technique that you can use. I might use it on this cart 99% of the time. It's either laziness that you'd use this for, or it's not that helpful, but you could use it. That's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's another method. I should mention as well with decal blocks, you'll need to put the block in the same group as the cart once you've added it. Otherwise, it's just going to fall off. So, for example, with this cart, I'd imagine it's just going to be fine to put it in the body folder because it should be welded to the cart. Most cars will have just a generic kind of universal weld on the inside and it will just kind of keep it on there. So that's all I can really explain it as without getting into the kind of technicalness of Studio. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually create a livery for you, and then once we've finished I can talk you around it on what techniques I used where, on how I created some of the patterns and decals. I'm going to attach an image on screen of what I'm going to try and create for this cart. And you'll see the next however long it takes me as a time lapse, so it'll be sped up. Right. I think that's the finished product. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. It didn't take too long. I'll check back in the footage, but I think that was only about an hour's work. And yeah, I mean, let's talk about it. So I did use a few decal blocks. So on the front here, with where it says Telefonica Movistar, and it's angled, I used blocks here because there is parts crossing each other here, and it would just be difficult to make a decal where it wouldn't interfere with that. So I used decal blocks. I made it the same angle as this part here. Likewise on the rear wing. This was more so laziness, really. I didn't really have to do this because I could have just done it like this, where I made a decal on the side here for the Seat logo. But for the rest of it, I mean, the rear end, I used a pattern here that I used, that I made, and I wrapped it around the whole thing where it kind of joins up with each other. The Repsol logos were built into it, same with the Pirellis. I did that as a last minute addition. On the side, the Red Bull on there, coming to the front with the Repsol and the flag, again that carries round, blends into a yellow front with a Seat and of course the Eurosport logo. That's my kind of trademark. Well, not really, but and then on top we got a plate for the number, big Movistar. Sides here nice and blue, nice and bright, just give it a little bit of space. And yeah, that's basically the livery. As you might have seen as I was making it, on this part, the decal was, I made it to be this size. I took the measurements of a ratio of 1 to 7.4, and basically I've taken that the whole way around. So like this part here would have been about 0.6 by 1. And yeah, that basically just using the same thing, using decals that I've just got from Google. I might have even quickly gone on Google as I was doing it to get some things if I've forgotten. But yeah, that's pretty much it, to be honest. Hopefully that's been a good guide, and you feel a bit more confident in creating liveries now. There's not really much more for me to add, to be honest. I think you kind of learn as you're making these liveries, to be honest. Like you learn things, you learn what works for you. And yeah, I think with these steps, with this guide, you should be able to make things like this. I'll attach lots of links in the description to the software that I use, servers that could be helpful, including the actual league for these carts. And yeah, that's basically it. So thank you very much for watching. I've been Uriality. This has been a guide to make tank chassis road racing liveries. And I'll see you in the next video, whenever that should be. So yeah, take care. Have a good one. Bye bye.